Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be discussing the history of cigars. Cigars are made from the leaves of a tobacco plant, which contains a chemical called nicotine. Tobacco plants are part of the nightshade plant family, along with potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, cauliflower, and other vegetables. Did you know that while very small amounts, there is also trace amounts of nicotine in those plants as well? Canada is within the top 12 producers of tobacco plants worldwide, behind places like China, India, Brazil, Cuba, and others. In just the year 2022, roughly 6 million tons of tobacco was farmed globally. While grown usually in tropical or subtropical regions, tobacco can also be farmed indoors. Tobacco was a natural resource to North and South America and was used by the indigenous people who lived here long before Europeans had arrived. For Canada's indigenous population, tobacco is one of the sacred medicines and is considered spiritual in nature. Tobacco, or sage, was often used for smudging, and tobacco is often offered now as a gift to an elder or knowledge keeper to thank them for their time and experience when they bless us with their wisdom. When Europeans began treating tobacco as a commodity that could be traded for, the nature of the relationship changed with tobacco for many of our indigenous peoples, but many upheld their traditional view of sacred connection with this medicine. This plant was originally used to help with respiratory issues, toothaches, and other illnesses, but was also used in preventative medicine practiced by the indigenous people, such as sweat lodges. Unfortunately, there is an epidemic of people, including indigenous people, who struggle with an addiction to cigarettes. Rather than using a ceremonial pipe with their naturally organic tobacco, many people develop an addiction to nicotine and start smoking independently and without ceremony. Let's hear from them for a minute.
The intention of smoke, the smoke goes back to the heavens, and it goes up the highest, and then the eagle gets it from there and it keeps going. We have certain tobaccos that we use in our pipes. And they're sacred in such a way as that they come from the soil that our ancestors are buried in. And our ancestors became the soil, they became the plants. And they carry our prayers up for us. I think you can get any closer to your ancestors than that. This is the tobacco we made. It's considered so sacred that even when you harvest it, you're in a good state of mind. Best to make your own tobacco as opposed to buying store-bought tobacco. But I mean, if that's all you have, then you put the intent in that and the prayer in it as best as you can, because sometimes that's all people have.
Something that is also a medicine that you can use to give back, give to elders, give to the animals, to the plants, and there's lots of other good ways to use it instead of, in just smoking a pack of cigarettes. And also there's so many natural tobaccos that are around that have so many different uses.
There's certain plants that are put into the smudges to calm you, some to awaken your senses, smudges for purification. This is what we're using it for, is usually in ceremonies to clear energy and help our ancestors come in. So we kind of honor everything and acknowledge that everything is connected in that oneness. Ours doesn't have a warning label.
To get a modern view on smoking, J. Bennett Alexander explains some history in the blog Holt's Clubhouse and his experience. Cigarettes started being produced in 1865, but they did not gain popularity until the war, and there was lots of propaganda surrounding smoking cigarettes. He states that the rate that women smoke went up 16% by 1929 from before the First World War, also likely partly due to their working in cigarette factories and joining the workforce. They also had some weird advertisements. I mean, look at at this at promoting women to lose weight by smoking Lucky Strike cigarettes. Alexander says, as we aficionados know, the cigars we love are handmade, while cigarettes are made by machine. Premium cigars are all tobacco. Cigarettes have tobacco in them that contains sugar, flavor enhancers, and other additives. Most notably, the tobacco in cigarettes is generally made up of chopped tobacco leaves, stems, reprocessed pieces, and scraps. For those who do not have experience in the cultivation of smokable plants, it is often thought that the stems are not desirable to smoke and would likely have to be broken apart by a type of grinder to be rolled into the cigarette. He states that cigars are most about their flavor profile, and even states that some people within the food industry include this in part of their routine tastings. To take a look at cigars and cigarettes from a researcher's point of view, both are dangerous for your health. Alexander made a couple of statements that made it sound like he might disagree, but it is considered common knowledge that cigars contain nitrites, nitrates, nitrogen oxides, ammonia, carbon monoxide, and tar, all of which cause cancer and some in higher quantities than within cigarettes. However, he may not be incorrect in them being better than cigarettes, as these contain over 1,000 chemicals of which at least 70 are commonly considered cancerous. A few that may be a little bit more familiar to those in a chemistry class would be arsenic, cadmium, lead, nickel, and uranium-235. Additionally, all nicotine products have a chemical referred to as tobacco-specific nitrosaminase, often referred to as TSNase, which is cancerous in nature. It forms a DUX within your DNA, which does explicitly mean that more molecules are being added to the already formed DNA strand. Researching into the farming practices that create cigars may also give us more information into potentially avoiding some of these chemicals, and potentially finding some places where Alexander may have spoken too soon again. Flora the Explorer, a blogger who is attempting to learn fluent Spanish while traveling, decided her next destination in Cuba was going to be a tobacco farm, where she met Michael. He informed her that the Cuban government actually seizes their best 90% of their crop every year and only allows them to sell their 10% within rural areas, where tourists are less likely to adventure. He also told Flora that the tobacco processed by the government was mixed with strange chemicals and additional nicotine, when local farmers would use fruit, sugar, spices, and alcohol to flavor their tobacco before fermentation and rolling. Perhaps Alexander wasn't quite so right about what additives he needed to be careful of in his cigars. Flora also visited a cigar factory to see how the working conditions were there. What she found might surprise you. Do you know what you have the legal right to in regards to work within your country or area? In Saskatchewan, we are guaranteed 1/2 hour break for every 5 hours worked. For example, if you work 4 hours, you do not get a break. If you work 8 hours, you get 1 break of half an hour. If you work 10 hours, you can have 2 breaks of a half hour. Sometimes companies offer additional breaks, such as a 15-minute break or a 5-minute smoke break, to employees, but this is at the discretion of that company. Flora found that within the factory, employees usually went to work for 10 hours, with an 8-hour shift and 2 hours dedicated to their lunch hour and a break. The conditions also did not seem horrible, but were also not comfortable. Flora commented that several of the male employees had preferred to work shirtless. One upside, apparently they seemed to be allowed to wear headphones to listen to music. To share the information, if you have already begun smoking, the sooner you stop smoking, the sooner your body can recover. If you stop smoking today, no matter how much you smoke, your body will make great strides towards fighting cancer for you within 5 or 10 years. If you need help with substance abuse, there are many great supports to reach out to, but there is also a support email associated with the First Nations Health Authority, as you can see in orange. So, to recap a little of what we know already. The indigenous people of the Americas had access to tobacco well before Europeans had arrived. We even found a clay pot dated to the 10th century that depicted a man smoking a cigar in a Mayan civilization. In the 16th century, cigars became popular with the aristocracy and started becoming a symbol of wealth. For reference, the 16th century refers to the 1500s, as the 20th century refers to the 1900s. This grew more in popularity throughout the 19th century, where businessmen and those of the upper class began smoking cigars. Cigar factories started being made, even in Canada, to be able to keep up with demand. As a side note, demand is a principle of economics that captures the consumer's desire to buy the product or service. It factors in how many there are within the market as well, as this often affects how much people are willing to pay. For example, if someone is trying to sell a book, it is going to be much more profitable if it was a signed copy or exclusive release than a mass release copy that there is an overabundance of. The Age of Enlightenment occurred within the 17th and 18th centuries. While not in full swing, things started changing within society to make people seem more normalized. This included the beginnings of the ban on smoking in public areas. This started in Mexico in 1575, about 100 years before the Age of Reason was truly to begin. With this, the Pope of the day, Pope Urban VII, banned smoking in all Catholic churches in 1590. It seems slightly ridiculous in modern times that people may have smoked in church, but they most certainly did. One of the first anti-tobacco articles was actually written by King James I in 1604, where he wrote his assumptions that the people who enjoy smoking are unclean and barbarous. About 20 years later, tobacco was banned across the entirety of the Ottoman Empire by Sultan Murad IV. This was not banning it in public places, but in its entirety. Even with how much anti-tobacco sentiment had been rising, the aristocracy did not let cigars fall to the wayside. With the tradition of smoking to complete a business deal, which did happen for the signing of the numbered treaties in Canada as well, fully cemented in the current day, the rise of cigarettes was ready to happen. Ad campaigns were launched by cigarette brands that wanted you to be their consumer for life. Some even tried marketing that they were healthier than other brands for various reasons. Characters such as Sherlock Holmes were depicted smoking, and at this point in time, smoking had become a trait of masculinity. Additionally, smoking cigars was also associated with aspects of male hygiene such as barbers and professional services regarding one's facial hair. Cigars had still become popular enough that factories had to be set up across the United States and Canada to keep up with their consumers. One such businessman who set up shop in the cigar business was Otto Brenner, who worked with his brother to create cigars in London, Ontario from 1881 to 1922. As a Jewish man in the New World, he often helped other Jews immigrate to Canada to work within his factories. At the height of his business, he made 10 million cigars in 1 year while having about 200 people in his employ. It's interesting to consider how many people he brought to Canada that would not have been able to immigrate away from Europe in another manner before World War II. It is also interesting to note that one of the first vaporizer devices, referred to as a vape today, was created in 1930 by Joseph Robinson. The slide that you see here is one of many that can be found at the Medical University of South Carolina website related to the history of tobacco products and devices. The average businessman no longer carries a cigar, but the reason is quite simple. Most places that businessmen met and would smoke a cigar are now smoke-free premises. While in an interview, Tom Peace, a professor of history, commented, "The temptation is to think that decline was caused by the anti-smoking campaigns, but it was actually the cigarette that eclipsed the cigar." So as the 1920s rolled along, the development of the cigarette became a more popular form of smoking and cigar smoking began to decline. But the anti-smoking campaigns of the 1990s and early 2000s also had a significant impact on those people who farmed tobacco. And in fact, in the mid-2000s there was a federal buyout plan for people who farmed tobacco and an encouragement to replace their crops with various types of nuts, watermelons, sweet potatoes, and even lavender. Which public place do you think that smoking would have been banned first? I'll give you a minute to guess. Maybe you are guessing that churches sound right, but perhaps somewhere like a restaurant where other people may not want to smell smoke. If you need more time, pause the video, but if you guessed either of those, you would be incorrect. The first place that smoking was prohibited was at gas stations, where it is considered a safety concern to have gas and flame near each other. In 1975, most places started banning smoking in public places. Interestingly enough, one of the places that smoking was banned the latest was hotel restaurants, as an attempt to cater to international guests. Our next legislation around tobacco product was in 1966, when they added the warning labels to the outside of all products. You now are forced to see a cancer tongue whenever you look at a pack. In 1979, the American Cancer Society even created an anti-smoking day on November 15 in an effort to stamp out dragon breath. In their blog, associated with the podcast, the Cigar Guys wrote that cigars have long been entwined with the business world, their smoke curling through the milestones of history and marking the rhythm of countless deals and decisions. Cigars have been there from the smoke-filled rooms where titans of industry plotted their next moves to the quiet corners of exclusive clubs where deals were sealed with a handshake and a puff. They symbolize status and success and a shared language across diverse business communities. Smoking with someone can dismantle barriers, foster camaraderie, and create greater open dialogue. Additionally, in his blog, in association with the brand Tabanero Cigars, Yanko Maseda explains why cigars may be important to an entrepreneur or businessman. He mentioned how helpful cigar lounges could be to set up business relationships and start good communication with either yourself or another person about how to successfully craft a plan for success. He stated it best when he said taking a moment to step away from the chaos and enjoy a cigar provides clarity and fosters mindfulness, enabling business professionals to gain a fresh perspective on their ventures. What did you think of this presentation? What surprised you? Did you know that there was so much history in cigars? What did you think about the farming experience in Cuba? Were you surprised to hear how much they did or did not work? Write a comment or reflect to yourself about what this little piece of history may mean to you. Thanks for watching.